The following program is underwritten by the Nevada Irrigation District. Since 1921, providing clean and healthy drinking and irrigation water to more than 24,000 homes, farms, schools, and businesses in Nevada and Placer counties.
But here's the upside of the equation. Now we have all this opportunity and all this motivation to promote our local economy first whenever we can, whenever we get the chance, to look for a brighter, cleaner energy future, to look for the green-collar jobs that are less likely to disappear as energy gets in more of a crunch, rather than more likely to disappear, to make this a more bikeable, walkable, livable community, to bring the next generations in on all this action, to get them motivated, see what the same challenges are, and get them interested in finding the same solutions. And more than that, the responsibility to leave them a place where we can all come home to eat and be proud of it. What else can you say about the economy? Well, it's part of our name. When our founders came up with this name, Alliance for Post Petroleum Local Economy, that's exactly what they had in mind: reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and building the local economy. Is it possible to do both at the same time? It is. We must, and we can, and we will.
Welcome to NCTV Interviews. I'm your host, Lew Sitzer, and today we're going to be looking at the past, present, and future with Dave Clark, who is one of the founding members of APPLE, which is Alliance for a Post Petroleum Local Economy. It's a mouthful, which is why we call it APPLE. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Lou. Thanks for inviting me.
And we're going to learn a lot today, I know, particularly focused on oil, the availability, the price, and what we can anticipate here locally about the oil and energy issue. So first, please, if you would, give the viewers a brief history, because I know that APPLE is a fairly recent organization, and you helped found it. So tell us what it is, what it does.
APPLE is a local grassroots advocacy group. We began in May of 2005 when a local woman, Raynette Senham, had the vision to put on what she called a town hall conference to create awareness of this issue that at that time was just beginning to gain any notice at all in the country. The term that is used is peak oil, which I'll define for you in a little bit. She showed a documentary on that topic, and brought in some speakers from all over the country. And those of us who attended that town hall conference chose to work from that starting point to try to form some group that would create this local awareness of this issue, because it's a pressing and urgent issue that will affect us locally here. So we started in a very simple manner and just met informally for several months. And over the course of that period, we came up with our name, which was just kind of an interesting process in itself. But we came together with a purpose of trying to immediately do what we could to spread the word about the coming energy shortages that we know are facing us in just the very near-term future. So in that same year of 2005, we put our first program together by bringing a writer who is quite renowned in the area of peak oil, named Richard Heinberg. We brought him to the Grass Valley Center for the Arts, and he made a presentation to a standing room only crowd to let people know what the implications are of peak oil. We went on from there in the following year in 2006 and had another event at the Center for the Arts. We called it What You Gonna Drive? And that was a forum for a lot of enthusiasts in this arena to showcase their cars. So we had cars from Davis that were plug-in, after the factory plug-in hybrid electrics that advertised 100 plus miles per gallon and could deliver that. We had a fully electric car that...
And this was 2005 still?
This was 2006 when we put on What You Gonna Drive.
Okay.
That was a big production for us because we had to come up with a venue and a format. And one of our fellow board members, Mike Thompson, actually that was his brainchild, and he did a lot of the production work in putting that together. So that again provided a little more exposure for us in the community here.
Right, I was at that car show, so to speak, and of course it drew a lot of interested people because Americans have a love affair with the car.
We do indeed, yeah, and we need them. You know, this country is spread out, and especially in a rural community like we're in here, cars are a pretty essential way to get around. Right. So we use that as a forum to continue our outreach, and then the following year, in 2007, our main events were a monthly meeting that we would have that started out in various venues and later came to be located primarily at the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains, the UUCM. And that provides an opportunity for community members to come on a monthly basis and talk among ourselves to try and find ways to deal with these issues that we know are just right around the corner and actually already coming upon us now. So that's what that was. The town hall meetings progressed into 2008. We are basically going to use the same format here in 2009 to continue to try and reach the community. I think one of the things I should mention at this point is our purpose. Apple's reason for being is essentially to create an awareness of peak oil, the shortages of oil and oil products in particular that we're facing very soon, and other energy issues as well. We feel that most people are not aware at all, or perhaps not sufficiently aware of the implications that this will have for the world economy and the way people live.
Right, and let's talk about that because I know there is the belief amongst many that this notion of peak oil may be just a fantasy, that in fact there's oil to be discovered. There are going to be innovations in the use of oil like biofuels and that will help supplement, so that do we really need to focus on this as an urgency? And I know you've brought some diagrams and graphs to talk with us about that.
Yeah, I have a chart that I'll refer to here in a moment that was provided to us by another of Apple's board members, Rick Hartman. And it shows quite graphically the beginning and the probable end of the oil age. It's this graph right here that begins in 1860. The first oil was pumped out of the ground in Pennsylvania in 1859 in Pennsylvania, and it carries through to 2050. What you're seeing, if you look up on this part of the graph, is all of the exploration for oil that has occurred since that time, and the expected progression of what that oil will be in the years to come. This peak right here is the year 2010. And just so that you can get a point of reference, 1950, which was just shortly before I was born, is right here. So this represented the number of gigabarrels of oil that had been produced, discovered, and distributed and used at that time. So just in my lifetime, basically, we have now reached the point here where next year, or thereabouts, all the oil that will ever be discovered hasn't yet been discovered, but the peak of production will occur on or about that period. And what that means is that we're not going to be running out of oil, but we are at a point where the maximum production on a per day or per year basis will have been reached. And from that point forward, less oil will be available every year. And the world's economy is going to have to deal with that, despite its desire to expand.
Right, and along with that chart, we can see that it isn't only oil production that has increased, it's population that has increased as well, and industrialization. We know that India, China, and other countries are becoming competitors in the use and demand of oil. So, but some people may not understand that because oil has been drilled at certain sites, there's actually a limited amount from that particular site. And so the production of oil from that site diminishes over time.
It does, and it's easy to imagine this. You can picture any given oil well as essentially a bell-shaped curve, where when you first drill the well, the oil comes out under tremendous pressure because it's been underground and it gushes up. And then as time goes by, that gushing slows down and you actually get to a neutral point, and then you have to actually pump it out to get to the latter parts of the oil that's available in that well. And after a certain period of time, you reach a point of diminishing returns where the investment that it takes to pump the oil out isn't worth the oil that you get. So that's true with one oil well, and it's true regionally or nationally. And in fact, the United States reached its peak of oil production around 1970, and it has dropped off since that time. So that's a region. If you take the same basic premise, which incidentally was first put together by an oil field geologist named M. King Hubbert back in the 1950s. If you take that set of equations that he devised and extrapolated into global oil production, you can see that same bell-shaped curve, which is exactly what this represents here. Now, these are projections for the years up through about 2050. And the reason that we're pretty sure that this is going to drop off at this rate is because oil field geology is a very refined science. It's been evolving since the beginning of the industry. They are working hard and investing a lot of money, the big oil companies are, and the countries of the world, to get as much oil as they can. It's a valuable commodity. So we have very good certainty, and independent analysts throughout the world agree that we are at or near the peak somewhere in the period between 2004 and 2010 or 11. That peak will be hit, and then what it boils down to is that no matter how much they spend and how hard they work, each year oil production will drop off, regardless of what demand is. And that's a scary proposition with regard to the economy.
Right, and we don't anticipate demand lessening.
No, most governments of the world are anticipating it continuing to increase through at least 2030, and of course they would like to continue beyond that.
Right, and this is one of the reasons why we're not only looking at the present, but we're anticipating the future and trying to plan and prepare for it.
Yeah, it's going to take a good deal of time to really prepare for the lessening of oil, because if you want your economy to expand and your people to prosper, you have to have a sense that the energy inputs are going to be available as you go forward. And if that assumption isn't really valid, you're going to have to rethink your entire economic structure. And that's really what we're faced with here, and that's why the urgency is what it is.
And one of the issues that we'll come back to probably later is how this peak oil and the diminishing availability of oil is also connected to climate, because one of the charts that is also associated with this is that as industrialization has taken place over the years, climate has changed and continues to warm up.
Yes, this is unequivocally proven. There is ample evidence, and only a very small minority of people aren't convinced that this has basically been caused to a large degree by man's intervention in pumping all of this carbon into the atmosphere over the last several decades. So it's a big issue, and climate change goes hand in hand with peak oil as a challenge to be met.
And in a sense, it's a challenge and an opportunity for us to prepare for issues like national security.
Right.
As energy becomes more expensive, going towards alternative forms of energy makes more sense.
Yeah, it does, and that's a big topic in itself. It not only makes sense, but it's imperative that we make that switch. And I think that's the direction that our country is going to be headed over the next several years, not only through the methods that we see with solar and wind energy and those types of things, but also just because we really have no choice. If we're going to power an economy the size of the United States, we have to have energy sources coming from places that are going to be not dependent on carbon-based fuels. And it's scary to contemplate, but this movement has to be made.
Right. So before we leave and talk more about the movement, I'd like to focus a little bit more on oil because we're looking at right now low prices.
Right.
And it was at $4.50 a gallon, and all of a sudden it's down at $2 a gallon now, and people are saying, well, you know, how come?
Well, it's a really good question, and it might lead some people to believe that the availability of oil is no longer a problem, but that is just not the case. What we're really dealing with here is the economics of peak oil, and this is how I interpret it, is the price of oil came down when the economy of the United States in particular and the world in general began to contract the middle of last year. The price of oil in the summer of 2008 was, as you say, up around $4 a gallon. But what wound up happening is that the recession that followed due to unrelated circumstances, the economy boiling over in other areas, was severe enough to where demand dropped, and of course the law of supply and demand came into play. But what seems to have happened is that there's been an overreaction in both directions. When the price rose up, the price of a barrel of oil rose up where it did, which was over $140 a barrel last summer, that was actually an overreaction to what people thought was going to be potential shortages going down the road. But now that the recession has set in and demand has dropped, we've now overshot it on the low end with the price of a barrel of oil going down around $40 a barrel. And so now we've seen just in the past couple of weeks, prices are coming back up, a barrel of oil is coming back up. So the equilibrium is being reached to a certain extent. But the problems really are going to arise when the economy begins to recover, whether it's this year or next year, and demand increases again. That's when we're really going to see the effects of the limitations on other countries that we import oil from to meet our needs.
Right. So we can anticipate that prices will continue to rise.
Yes.
One of the statistics I heard recently is the month of December, this recent month of December, the driving and consuming of oil decreased by a third, over 30% of people that were buying. I mean, the consumption was 30% less.
I hadn't heard it was that much, but that's amazing that we can drop off.
So, and partly the price was a reaction, as you were saying, to people not wanting to spend, not wanting to buy, and prices go down when that's the case.
Yeah, and this is good in the sense that it's making people more conscious of their driving habits. Instead of driving all over for little or no reason, people are aware there's a cost involved, and that's good on several fronts because it's going to reduce the amount of fuel that we use in this country, and it's going to correspondingly reduce the amount of carbon that fuel would emit.
So let's get to some of the present and future. One of the things we can anticipate is the price of oil will continue to rise. And so as people look at what is a smaller budget and more costly oil, and the likelihood of climate change in the process, what are some of the things your organization is doing? What are some of the things that it's recommending?
Well, what we're doing is making outreach to interested groups that have contacted us to talk about how they can implement energy efficiency and conservation in their organization. We did this, for example, with a group of nurses through our local hospital here who asked us to come and make a presentation to them. And in their particular situation, they do a lot of driving. These are hospice nurses that go out to the patients' homes. So in their instance, we focused a lot on how they can be most efficient with their driving habits. And one example we pointed out to them is a term called hypermiling, which is something you can Google on the internet there. And it essentially involves just very conscious awareness of your driving so that you really minimize your accelerating and braking as much as possible. So it's really just a heightened awareness of driving habits. So that type of thing is what we can recommend for this point in history. We're hoping that new vehicles become available that are much more fuel efficient than what we have been used to. And we see some evidence of that actually too. So what Apple is trying to do on that front is just general awareness within the community. And in addition to that, we've also spoken with some of our government entities to try and make them as aware as they can be of this issue and the fact that it's going to impact us locally pretty severely. Best example of that is that our Apple founder, Raynette Senham, last year was elected to the Nevada City Council. And through that forum, she has had tremendous input into the politics of Nevada City and was instrumental in achieving the passage by the council of an energy, let's see, I guess you'd call it an energy scarcity resolution, which calls for the formation of an energy task force, which is their goal is to bring together data on all of the energy usage within Nevada City with a goal towards reducing it by a substantial percentage. I think Raynette and the others in Nevada City are talking about a 20% reduction in 3 or 4 years. So they're getting the baseline numbers on that. So that's what Nevada City is doing, and they're taking a strong lead among the other governments locally here in going forward. And we'd like to see the same type of an approach taken in Grass Valley and by the county as a whole, and to a lesser extent up in Truckee. But it's a big task to get people's attention on this, and it's still working on that.
I see it as the equivalent of the Apollo mission, you know, the man on the moon project that we as a country took on. But the difference being that I see that this is something that individual citizens can actually work on, whereas how many of us could work on the Apollo mission? But really it's a nation dedicated, if we are successful, a nation dedicated to the idea of conservation and sort of looking towards innovation as a way to work through these challenges.
It's a big mental shift that we all have to undertake. We are so used to having grown up with abundant energy and an economy that continually moves forward. Innovation is certainly a big part of it, and there's been tremendous improvements in our lifestyle and in the efficiencies of certain things. We haven't seen it so much in the operation of automobiles, and that's something that I think will be changing a lot as we go forward. But I think where we really need to go is to, and this is where you say everybody can participate in this, by just ramping up their own awareness of how they use energy in every aspect of their lives. The two basic areas that we all deal with as individuals are the buildings that we inhabit and the cars that we drive. And I mentioned hypermiling as a way to minimize your gas consumption. And of course, if you have the means to buy a more fuel-efficient car, or if you can wait until next year when the gas-electric hybrids become available, Chevrolet will have a product out there.
The Volt.
The Volt is coming out at the end of 2010. That type of thing is a good way to be aware of that. And then with regard to our homes, they say that at least 40% of the energy that is used in the United States is for buildings. And the largest part of that is our homes. So every individual can become conscious of where they use energy and where they can save energy.
Yeah, I know simple things that I grew up with that seems to be ignored by a lot of people. I know I've had to really work on my own children is turn off the lights.
Turn off the lights.
Also replacing lights with the
LEDs.
With LEDs and also
and
the
CFLs,
which are much more energy efficient. And so many ways in which we can conserve. I know one of the things I'm looking at is appliances that are left on all the time and are just ready to be fired up, and whether or not how much energy that consumes. But there are so many ways in which we can. I know I work with PG&E all the time to get our washing done before 12 o'clock because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And also there's less demand publicly for it, and do it after 6 o'clock. I mean, there are a lot of ways in which people can save money and not consume as much energy.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of classes that are available. In fact, many of them are offered by PG&E. PG&E has brought trainers up to our area at our request to teach contractors, for example, how to build more energy efficient homes and buildings. That's just been in the past year or so that this effort has been made. But a lot of classes are available to the public too, through the internet and in courses that are taught around Northern California. All of what they talk about it boils down to basically two things: energy efficiency on the one hand and conservation on the other. And those are different things. Efficiency talks about using the least amount of energy from the most efficient source as possible. And conservation is just basically using as little energy as you need in order to get your given task done.
And so appliances will be more and more built to be energy efficient.
Right.
And so this is something that we're going to need to work on, and hopefully we'll have PG&E on as well. And I want to remind people that we have a website that viewers can go to for Apple. And
Yes.
There are meetings which are the first Wednesday of each month.
Of each month.
At the Unitarian Universalist Church in Grass Valley, 6:30 in the evening, first Wednesdays of each month.
That's right.
And ways in which people can be contacted is primarily on the website, I would believe.
Yeah, Apple's website is apple-nc.org, NC for Nevada County.
I have to interrupt. Our time is up. I want to thank you, Dave, and hopefully there'll be opportunity to revisit this issue because it's not going away.
Nope, it's with us for now and for a while.
So thanks for watching NCTV Interviews. Thanks to Gail and Marilyn, Bill and Michael, our crew. Become a member of NCTV. This is another way to bring our projects and challenges locally. So thanks for watching.